This is Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. An informal chats with top business moguls as they share their stories of failure and success in a fun and relaxed way. Get entertained, educated, and unlock the secrets to success.
Welcome to Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. I have another wonderful friend, Andy Dastur, who's president of North American Insurance Services. Andy, I am so happy that you can join the program. I've been working on this for a few months now to get you here, and it's quite an honor. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So tell us about your business. You and I have been friends for a few years. I know you chair the board of a nonprofit, which is how we originally met. You've done a lot in the community. I'm amazed at not only the business, but what you've done for the community. And we can talk about some of the community items later, but tell us about your business.
I like volunteering for nonprofits, but at my business, we're there to make money. So North American Insurance Services is one of the largest of the independent insurance marketing brokerages. What that basically means is that we're not an insurance company, and we don't sell insurance. We're a brokerage. We sit in between the two. The industry has consolidated substantially over the last 5 to 7 years or so. So I don't know if we're the biggest, but we got to be pretty close to the biggest of the independents.
I love it. So we'll walk back kind of in time just so you can tell us how the business started and who you serve. But tell us more. So our group of people that we really focused on are entrepreneurs, not necessarily small businesses, but all businesses. But you have a unique space in helping companies, particularly small, mid-sized companies, figure out how to manage their benefits program that they offer to their employees.
Absolutely.
Walk us through kind of the industry, because I think most entrepreneurs, when they start their businesses, they don't think about, one, the cost of insurance for their employees or the competitive advantage you might give them as well. So you come in and you help them do what?
Well, one of the things I love about the health insurance industry is that every single American believes that they should have it, right? Nobody thinks it's optional. Not everybody can afford it, but nobody thinks it's optional.
Right.
So think about a product that you can offer to every single American, and they all want it, and they're all willing to pay a lot of money.
Right.
And when you stop and think about how much they're paying between employers and individuals and families, they're paying about as much for their health insurance as they maybe only their mortgage is a bigger expense.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of money, right? We got billions and billions of dollars flowing through the healthcare system. So that's where I sit, and that's what I like about the business. I love the fact that every American would like to have the best possible plan that they could possibly afford.
Right.
But it's really gotten expensive, and so that's where you got the government, of course. They have now stepped in, and they get their 2 cents. So, we live in a very heavily regulated environment. But in terms of going back to your question about what do individuals and small businesses and mid-sized businesses need to be thinking about, they really need to be spending more time on their health plan than they probably do.
Yeah,
they probably don't think that much about it. Maybe what they do is they'll say, they'll go to a broker and they'll say, shop my plan around and I'll just pick whatever's the cheapest.
Right.
And that's fine. I can understand that. Insurance is complicated, so maybe the easiest thing to do is just pick whichever one's the cheapest plan.
Right.
It's not always the best way to do it, but it's certainly the easiest and the simplest. And especially if business owners aren't spending the time to really think about their health plan the way they probably should, then it's probably once a year they take, half an hour to sit with their broker and they look at different plans and say, I'll just pick this one. But if they had any other business expense, or again, if it's an individual, any other expense that was that significant, you wouldn't take it that lightly.
I agree.
When you shop for a home, you don't just walk up and say, I'll take that one.
Right.
Right? You don't say, I'll just take the cheapest.
And it's funny. You're absolutely right. And we can discuss that a little more. But I've worked with a lot of companies that were small businesses owned by private equity. And I was surprised at how much they just accepted whatever they were told as their new cost and their new plan. And I joined one company, and I went to the CFO after our renewal, and I just joined and needed to control our costs. And I was able to build a good plan, so I didn't reduce the quality of the benefits. I improved the quality of the benefits and reduced the costs. I think I had that year maybe a 7, 10, 17%, somewhere in that range, reduction. And the CFO came to me. He was probably in his late 60s at the time. And he said, Ronnie, I have never seen a reduction year over year in my benefits before. And I didn't think they tried hard enough,
Yeah.
was my position. And so I kept pushing the broker, and I said, look, this is where we need to be. Here's where we need to go. If we need to change insurance carriers, I'm okay with it. You need to let them know that we're willing to change. And they sharpened their pencil. And we ended up getting a really good deal for our employees. But I think a lot of companies, as you mentioned, they just accept it.
They do. And in addition to the fact that it's a huge expense, let's also agree that it's probably one of the most important factors in the hiring and retaining of talent.
Right.
They may look at their paycheck and make no mistake that matters. But if you don't think that the second thing on that list, sometimes it's the first thing on the list, is what do the health plan benefits look like?
And I agree. When I've gone into these companies to help reorganize their business, one of the items that I built, and I insisted from a leadership perspective that we do it in with our broker, a wonderful benefits guide. So it looked really nice. It was presentable. For me, it was a marketing tool. And that's what I had to explain to them, because before I even hire someone, they want to see the benefits. That's part of their analysis. How much are they paying? What does the quality look like? And it also gives them a chance to sell our culture. And I think a lot of people miss putting that culture fear in their benefits manual. And that's what I did. So you're right on. It's a big deal for all employees.
Got to compete in a highly competitive environment for talent.
You do.
Your health plan should be one of the most important things that any CEO should be looking at. And going back to a word you used earlier, and granted I'm biased because this is my business, but let's go back to the word you used, culture.
Yes.
What message are you sending talent, whether you're hiring or retaining,
Right.
if all you're doing is the cheapest?
Right.
Again, it's easy to say, just pick the cheapest plan, and it's not my money, so they're probably thinking I'm biased. But if you look at your health insurance as an investment in your employees,
Right.
then you might look at it from a slightly different lens than just saying, hey, all I care about is whatever I can get, that's the cheapest. And one of the things that employers don't know, if they researched, not only could they find ways of having the broker sharpen his pencil, but to even look at all the great alternatives there are out there for employers and for individuals. The government would probably prefer that there be a one-size-fit-all solution for everybody.
Right.
And you hear them talking about that a lot, right? Let's just have one health plan that everybody can have. And that sounds good. First of all, that's really expensive. Right. We can come back to that issue if we want. But the second thing is Americans don't think that way.
I agree.
They are not one-size-fit-all people.
Right.
They don't want something as important as this where they got no choice, where they just are handed something. So employers should really, if they think about their spending on healthcare as an investment, they would spend more time looking at what all the alternatives are out there. Don't just rubber stamp whatever happens to come to their desk. Ask those extra questions, or have somebody who's knowledgeable to ask those extra questions. See if there are other options out there. That you're going to be, every individual and every employer would be shocked to know that there are so many alternatives out there, and they just don't really know. Nobody.
They hadn't taken the time. So the one thing I look at as well is the timing and the rhythm. You said that you're getting into your busy season.
Yep.
And for a lot of companies, especially the small ones, they need to keep this in mind. The bigger companies are oftentimes on a first year, beginning of the year cycle. Yep. Which means that they're starting to look at their renewals by August. Yep. Generally. The small companies kind of get squeezed if they're on an annual renewal, a calendar year renewal. Then they might get pushed to September, October for a lot of the brokers, depending on how big that broker is. And they get kind of lost between the big companies. But they definitely need to start early, and they need to start thinking about it. I know they can't get a lot of their data before a certain period of time to push out for a renewal. But they need to start processing so they can think critically about what we're going to ask, how we're going to build our program, what changes we're going to make. I love, by the way, the flexible spending account. It just popped in my head as we were talking. I love adding that to the program. But walk us through your typical company profile. Are they small companies, 50 to 150 employees, 300, 500? How does your company profile look mostly?
Yeah, our focus is on smaller employers. Okay. That would be less than 100 employees. And the reason...
Which is so critical, by the way, because those companies, they need you.
So that's why they are the most underserved.
Right.
Trust me, General Motors doesn't have a shortage of people talking to them, right? Yeah. Toyota, they got no shortage of people talking to them. But it's the small employer. It's small tech firms. It's small blue collar, white collar, gray collar, those kinds of small employers that are largely underserved, and nobody really invests as much time in our industry in those employers because they're always looking for the big fish, right? They're always looking to elephant hunt. But the vast majority of the group market are small business.
They are.
It's not Toyota.
Right.
It's entrepreneurs that are starting up businesses, and now they have 5 employees, then they go to 10, and then they go to 20, and then they go to 50. And that's really what excites me about the market, not some, business been around 100 years and got 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 employees. There's plenty of people in this business that would love to go talk to those people.
Exactly. Most people don't realize. So you think of the big brand names that we all see, but the vast majority of employees and the vast majority of companies are small business companies.
That's exactly right.
And they can absolutely use your help.
But I recognize that in our industry, that looks like a lot of day-to-day blocking and tackling, right? That's a slog to deal with 5 and 10 person groups, but that's what we love. We love those small employers. We love coming up with innovative solutions for those employers. We love talking to small businesses and helping them grow because their health plan will help them grow. I know that sounds weird. Like, how can an expense like health insurance help a small business grow? But I promise you it does. If you really look at it the right way, it could be one of the most valuable assets that you have as an employer to attract and retain.
And what do you find? Are you finding that new startup companies are finding you? Or do you think they're so busy on their new product or service that it takes them a while to figure out that they need you? And so most of your companies have been in business 10, 15, 20 years. What does that profile look like? I don't know if you have any data on it, but...
What I can tell you is part of the reason why we have done so well with that small employer is so often we start with them as an individual.
Okay.
So we'll talk to somebody who is whatever age and they're an individual. Maybe they just started their own business. They're self-employed. By the way, our individual business is massive self-employed people.
Okay. See, that's good to know.
Okay. So now we got a self-employed person. And next thing you know, they got to hire a couple people because they can't keep up with the business. And then they kind of hire a couple more. And then they call us back and they're like, I know we talked about my health plan for me and my family as a self-employed person, but now I got 7 employees. Now what do I do? I need a group plan. Okay, well then we migrate them to a group plan. And as they grow, we'll continue to evolve their health plan as their business evolves. 50 employees is a big number for our industry because all sorts of different regulations kick in after 50 full-time employees. Okay. So we look at the business under 50 and 50 and over as if they were 2 separate entities, 2 separate functions of the industry because so many things change for an employer once they go over 50. So yeah, we're wanting to be along for the ride from the time that they become self-employed all the way through to when they hit 50. And then when they hit 50, we re-engage them again, and we have to change gears a little bit.
Sure.
But we want to continue to be along the way for the entire cycle of that small business.
So what's intriguing about it is our economy is partly shifted to a gig economy in many ways. So people are picking up either extra work or they're truly independent contractors now, and it seems like there's more of it. So it sounds like you're a great option for those people that are now transitioning into doing part-time or side work as they start to build their independent career.
We love entrepreneurs in every possible way and in every possible industry. Entrepreneurs are the lifeblood, right, of this economy. That's really what makes America so great and so different from other countries that don't have that entrepreneurship type of culture. Well, we do. And so my company really focuses on that entrepreneur. We figure if we can work with them when they're just getting started and they're just self-employed, and they've just made that transition from working at a company to now being an entrepreneur, being self-employed, we figure if we can work with them there, then we can continue to grow our business relationship as their business grows.
That's amazing.
And we've been with them since the time they were self-employed individual or family and move them all the way to a small, then to a medium, and hopefully continue to grow with them as they grow.
That's a great interesting point that you made, though, is because as people start to look at being an entrepreneur, you're an absolute resource. You're like serving as their agent if they were in the sports industry, trying to give them that resource and that ability, one, to care for their families, for them and their families through the healthcare process. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah,
now, how did you get started in this industry?
By accident, to be honest. I graduated from Texas A&M, and I got a finance degree, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it. A lot of stuff going on in the economy at the time when I graduated, and I literally just applied for a job at an insurance company, which is now the largest health insurance company in the country, and I spent 10 years working at that insurance company in a variety of different roles as I learned. Right. I think, one of the things I wanted to mention, if there's a young person listening to this podcast, from somebody who's been in business for a long time,
sure.
And I work with a lot of young people in the business that I run, whether that's employees, whether that's insurance agents or consumers. But I was really coachable, and I think that's one of the reasons why.
Interesting.
I always am looking for people who are trainable and coachable. Right. I don't need the smartest person in the room.
Right.
I just need somebody that's willing to listen and learn.
Right.
And I think if you press an employer, they probably would say the same thing. Yeah, you look at the resume, and yeah, you're looking for talented people with strong skills. Make no mistake. But there's so many.
Right.
So how do you really choose if you're an employer and you're looking to hire a young person? Well, to me, there's two things that I look at. Of course, fit, right? You want somebody who fits in your culture as an organization. Okay, well, let's just take that as a given. That's kind of a soft look. But it's the coachability and trainability. I don't care if they're 20 or 40 or 60. If they're coachable and they're trainable, then I can work with that person. If they come into the interview acting like they're the smartest person in the room and they know everything and they start already telling you, well, let me tell you all the things I'm going to change in your business on my first day.
Right.
I'm like, how could you possibly know anything about my business by just sitting here in an interview and acting like you know everything? Right. And again, that's regardless of 20s, 40s, 60s, it doesn't matter. Coachability. And the same thing translates to our insurance carrier partners. If they're people that we can work with and they'll listen, they're great partners. It's the same thing with our insurance agents. It's the same thing with our customers. If they're willing to listen, we can really help people. If they're coming and just saying, I just, want to do what I want to do, then you're just buying a commodity. Go online and just don't waste my time. You could just go online by yourself.
I agree. Now, that's an interesting premise. At one of the companies I worked, we were a healthcare company. We had hospitals, and then we had insurance side in our business as well. But our philosophy was hire an attitude and train for skill.
Yeah, exactly.
So our premise was the same. Now, for some positions, they need to have certain credentials. So our doctors needed to be medical doctors.
Exactly.
But beyond that, it was really about that fit and how coachable they were when we brought them in. Could they really understand our business, our industry, the way we function, our values as well, our company values? And then we can work with anything else from that point.
Absolutely agree. Yep. Yeah. We're absolutely on the same page.
How long did you work for someone else before deciding to get into your own venture as a leader?
Yeah, so 20 years. In some ways, I wished I would have been an entrepreneur earlier, but I was committed to climbing that corporate ladder, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get to that next level. I'm going to get to that next role. And I soon found out that I was confident in what I did and what I'd learned, that I was ready to take the plunge and do it for myself. Make no mistake, it was tough. It was hard. Any entrepreneur or want to be entrepreneur on this call or on this podcast should know that the first couple of years are rough.
They are.
And you have to look at things longer term and recognize that it's going to take some time. So be prepared for that. Recognize that if you're not willing to commit at least a couple of years to figure out what you're trying to do, you might as well not start it. There's no way you're going to be able to do it quickly. Now, there's always exceptions, right? We were just talking about. There's an exception where first year and the thing blows up and everybody's doing great. But those are exceptions. And you shouldn't go into that any kind of business thinking that, boom, it'll just blow up no matter how whiz-bang your tech is.
No matter how smart you are.
No matter how smart you are, it doesn't happen fast. It's a slog at the beginning.
I had a good friend. At one point, I was in the supply chain realm, and I had hundreds of subcontractors. And I remember speaking to one of the guys. They had become a $60 million business, so they were successful as a small business. But he said in those early years, he was what they hear on maybe Shark Tank and some of these other programs. He was using credit cards to pay vendors. He didn't take a personal check for several years in income. And you keep going, but you committed to the concept and you just have to stay with it.
Totally agree. And if you're patient and you keep working it, and you got to work it really hard too. Trust me, I work way harder at my own company than I ever did working for somebody else's company, although I thought I was working hard.
Right.
I think maybe the biggest difference is I spend a lot more time thinking about my business. Whereas when I was somebody else's employee, I'd go to work, I'd work it really hard, and then I'd go home at night.
Right.
Running my own business means I'm thinking about it all the time. Yeah. I never stop thinking about it. I never stop thinking about, we got to make payroll. We want to increase sales. We want to increase revenue. We want to keep our costs in line. It is never ending.
So you have to tell me this. I was having a conversation with a friend just yesterday. And I hated to admit this, but I was working on some projects, and then I decided to go for a walk. It was, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And then I was talking to this friend, and I said, it was fascinating. I don't know if I should admit this on air or not, but it was fascinating. My moments of inspiration on a walk, right, or a run or workout, or in the shower. Do you have any moments of inspiration? Like there's this time either right before going to sleep or this moment where you have these great ideas that it always seems to come to you in that moment?
There's no question. There's consistency as to when it is. Unfortunately, it's usually early in the morning, and I kind of awake, but not really awake. It might be 4 a.m.
Okay.
And all of a sudden something will hit me. And at first, I sometimes even think it's a dream. Maybe I'm just dreaming this. And then I realize, no, it's not a dream. And then, I got to get up and I got to go do something.
How funny.
Got to get up and send out an email, or I got to jot something down. And unfortunately, sometimes it's hard to go back to bed, right? So now it's 5 a.m. I'm like, okay, well, I got to get up
started.
Yeah, might as well keep going. That's the challenge of running a business is you're thinking about it all the time. You're constantly trying to find ways of moving it forward.
Right.
And I'm sure anybody who runs a business would probably tell you the same story, whether it was in the shower or whether it's 4 o'clock in the morning like me. It's the same thing. At some point, something hits them, and they're like, it just always seems to come at that time or during that.
I always keep my phone nearby. I have a note section where I put a lot of those. It used to be a pad and pencil, but now it's my phone that I grab. I love on our next program, I'd love to have you back, and I want to talk about some of your community work as well as culture within your organization. But do me a favor, because your business is so unique in this realm. Tell me kind of the breadth and scope. I know we had lunch one day a couple years ago, and you were telling me how many associates you have across the country and people selling your product and working for you as a broker. And then you have companies throughout the country. You're not just a local operation in Texas. Tell us about the scope. I remember you saying, I can't remember the numbers, but how much you had grown since you first began with the company and adding new associates, employees, and adding new businesses. You've grown enormously.
No question about it. We operate in all 50 states.
Wow.
We have agents and brokers in all 50.
What's different with you is you have to be licensed in all of those states.
Absolutely.
It's just not like opening up a retail store.
No, in fact, in the health insurance business, believe it or not, plans, insurance companies, and products and prices can vary by county.
Right.
So you talk about 50 states, try 5,000 counties. And yes, you have to at least be knowledgeable enough. Now, granted, you can't possibly know every county, but you have to have a vast knowledge if you're working nationwide, like I am, because they can vary that tremendously. Some insurance companies are great in this county. You might just literally drive across the street and all of a sudden, different set of plans are more competitive there. When I started this thing, we really had, I'm sorry to say this, 2 producers.
Oh, wow.
2. And I remember, just a real funny story. And they were buddies.
Okay.
And I always remembered they loved playing golf. And I always remembered when they would take a vacation, because they and their spouses would take a vacation together. And I always hated it because I knew we only had 2 producers and they would both take a vacation at the same time.
So 100% of your people are offline, right?
They're all offline. I'm like, oh my God, we gotta not be so reliant on those 2 people. I'm glad to see that both of those people are still around and they're still great. But now they're 2 out of 4,000.
4,000? You grew from 2 to 4,000?
2 to 4,000.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So now we have 4,000 independent producers. They're located in all 50 states. The customers are located in all 50 states. And, keep in mind, these are all independent brokers, so they're self-employed entrepreneurs themselves.
Right.
So much of what I do is certainly insurance, but so much of it is also developing their entrepreneurship, looking for ways that they can grow their businesses and their incomes. I always look at insurance agents in 2 separate buckets, and I think this is probably true of anybody that works with independent contractors. One bucket is ones that look at what they do as a business, and the others look at it like, well, this is just like a job to me, and I'm just trying to make enough money to pay the rent, or I'm just trying to make enough money to pay my car payment, send my kid to college, or whatever. The ones that look at it like a business are always more successful than the ones that look at it like a job. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, run it like a business.
Right.
Run it to make money. If you're just looking to do enough so you're paying your bills, just enough so that you're putting your kid to college and paying your car payment, you're never going to be as successful.
Right.
It's just the fact of my business, and I would imagine any other industry where it's heavily dominated by independent 1099 independent contractors. It's the same thing.
It's interesting. I just thought of Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is a unique model. They own all of their restaurants, but different from some of the other fast food places where they have franchisors that own the franchise. But what they did with their model, they don't have like a GM for the store. They have owner-operated. So these are people that buy into the premise, and then they run it like a business. And I think that lends to the quality of their facilities. Like you go into any Chick-fil-A across the country, the people are nice, they're welcoming, the food is consistent, it's a pleasant experience versus some fast food restaurants you go into and you think, am I safe in this location? So Chick-fil-A does something I think very similar to what you described. You give them ownership. You make sure that they look at it as their business. Exactly. And then they'll treat it with a different level of respect and quality, sounds like.
And and I can help people develop businesses.
Right.
If it's just a job to pay your rent, there's only so much I can do. Then it's just activity, and you just gotta block and tackle on a day-to-day basis to make enough money to make a living. The beauty of health insurance is that every American wants it.
Right.
Everybody in this room wants health insurance. Promise. No exceptions.
Right.
No matter how old or how young you are. And so you don't have any shortage of prospects, right?
Right.
Literally everybody.
Everyone needs it.
Everybody. Now, sometimes the government helps pay for it because they don't have the money to do it, but even people who can't afford it, they still get health insurance. So if you're running a business, that's how you look at the market and the opportunity. You look at it like everybody is a prospect for what I'm trying to sell.
That's amazing. So every football game you go to, if you're at your kid's soccer game.
Everybody, right? No, that's exactly right. Everybody in your neighborhood? Yep.
Right.
Everybody you're friends with? Your relatives? And it's not like you're pushing something on people. Health insurance is bought.
Correct.
It's not sold. And the reason it's bought is because everybody wants it. They're just trying to figure out, how do I get the best possible plan for me and my family or my small business at a price I can afford? Right. So then, if you're an insurance broker, you just got to tell people what you do. Yeah. And you just got to provide good service and innovative solutions. But if they just share with them what they do, people will come out of the woodwork saying, hey, can you help me with this? Can you look at this? And it also makes what I do really fulfilling. I say this to our brokers all the time, but I really mean it. We change people's lives for the better.
You do.
If you drive around any city and you look at doctor's offices or medical clinics or hospitals, where does that money come from?
Right.
It all flows through their insurance.
It does.
There's not a money tree out back that they're, plucking cash from.
Right.
All of that comes through the health insurance system, whether that's government or insurance companies. It's the same thing. It's still insurance. So I think sometimes, I know I'm very passionate about my topic. I think sometimes people lose sight of the fact that this is really crucial. If you look at it even from an even broader perspective, the last numbers I saw is that healthcare is about 20 to 25% of our GDP.
Oh, wow. It's a big amount.
It's big. It's that big. And if you look at the government spending, if you take out Medicare, Medicaid, and Obamacare, ACA, Affordable Care Act, that is the largest portion of government spending, and it's not even close. Defense spending, nothing compared to healthcare.
I think people would be surprised to hear that.
I think they'd be surprised. Healthcare is America's #1 government expense.
So, Andy, I'd love to dig into that a little more. We're at the end of this program, so I'd love to have you back. But as we end this discussion, you mentioned coachable being a big item for people to really understand. But if you had to give an entrepreneur like you some advice, any tips, any business decoded tips, any inside knowledge, what couple of tips would you give them on starting a business, growing a business? I know we've discussed something, but what would you end with in giving them some advice other than contact you as they start the business?
Absolutely. We'll just put that one to the side. Thanks for the plug. I absolutely think life is never-ending learning. You got to learn. There's no such thing as the end of learning. You should be doing it until the day you die. When you decide to become an entrepreneur, you've got to learn. And I will tell you, one of the things that I think I missed when I first became an entrepreneur was the value of a mentor.
Okay.
I guess I always thought the word mentor was a little silly. I just call it that. I just thought it was kind of silly. Like, what do you need a mentor for? I know the business. I know how financial statement works. I learned that when I was 18, 19 years old. But the value of a mentor, to me, is way greater than most small businesses realized. Find somebody, anybody that's willing to be your mentor. If nothing else, even if they know nothing about your business, somebody that you can bounce things off of. So
that goes back to your coachable, as you mentioned.
That's right. But if you're not coachable, you probably think mentors are silly.
Exactly. Right.
But then when I was looking back even at times earlier in my career, I realized there have been people in my career that made me who I am today. And I would never have been able to progress the way that I think I did had I not had people along the way investing time in me. Sometimes it was giving me advice. A lot of times it was just listening.
Right.
But yes, you're right. That's sort of two sides of the same coin.
Absolutely amazing advice.
I can't emphasize enough how wonderful starting a business is and entrepreneurship is. As much as you might hear me complain about 4 o'clock in the morning, the truth is I would never go back.
There's so much beauty in it.
Oh, the ability to create, the ability to hire people and change their lives for the better, create a nice environment for them to work, to make a good living. And even if that means that their living is at some other place, that's okay. I feel like I have helped somebody continue to progress in their career. And I love it when employees come to me. It's like, hey, Andy, I'm sorry, but I got this other job and it just pays me more. And I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Anything that helps people grow and makes their lives better for themselves and their families, I love it.
So, Andy, thank you for joining us on Business Decoded. Great insight, and I hope to have you back very soon.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Thank you for listening to Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. Please be sure to subscribe and share and stay tuned for more incredible Business Decoded episodes.